Started, like Justin said, I'm going to be presenting test-driven development today. So, what is TDD? It's basically a method to develop software by writing tests first and using that to drive the design of your application code. And just note, it's kind of just a discipline. It's not a guarantee that you'll get good or bad design. You still have to design yourself. It's just kind of a way to keep you organize your code, and ensure that you have test coverage. So there are three basic steps to TDD. It's called red-green refactor. What the red step is, you start with writing a failing test, and then the green step would be you write the simplest code you can to achieve a passing test. And then after that, you take a look at your code and see, can I make it simpler? Can I make it better? And that's the refactor step. And then you go back, write another failing test, and so on. So why TDD? It kind of forces you to think about your design, and that basically, if you can't think of a test, you can't write a test for your functions, it's probably too big, too complicated, or you don't understand your problem. So it's probably a good idea to break things up and figure out how to write, how to better design it so that you can actually test that code. And it encourages smaller, understandable code, and like I said before, it ensures that your tests are written. You have all your tests. So that's just a short introduction to what TDD is. So what next is I'm gonna walk us through kind of building a small piece of functionality to an application using TDD. So I have this thing I wrote too many years ago, and looking back at the code, I'm embarrassed. It's crappy, but basically this is a small application to kind of like just a dice roller. So you can, let's say you want to roll, type in, I want to roll 3d8. It'll roll, logs out that you rolled the d8 3 times, gives you the total. And that's pretty much it. You can set the modifier, like add 3, roll 3d6, gives you the total right there. So really simple, but it can be designed a little better. And this is DiceDude 2.0. It's missing a lot of buttons in the original because it's not completely done yet. I have the code set up so it has all the buttons rendered here for rolling dices, setting the modifiers, setting the number of dice to roll, and the modifiers. Click this to toggle plus minus for the modifier. But the functionality that's missing is actually logging out what you wrote, so we get crazy errors. So this is the source code. We'll mostly just be dealing with the app test and the app module. So I usually develop with kind of this screen on, or this window on a second screen. I start with npm run coverage. It'll start running my tests. Have it run all the tests. So this here, what you're seeing here is the test coverage. It's how much of your tests, how much of your code is being covered by your unit tests. Um, the reason that there's only a 50% here in app is because in app I'm not testing the connect function, these parts here, because in React, that part, I'm exporting the component itself, and in my tests I pass in those properties, which is basically what this connect does. So there's no reason to really test that. So in my test here, oh, actually, that's something we're going to be doing. So generally, when I start, yeah, we do have to think it's not we come up with one test at a time. But kind of like when you design the functionality you're going to be building, I kind of list out ahead of time a few of the test cases that I want to test, and then start writing the test from there, and then building the code. So right here, I want to render a paper component, and that's a component from Material UI. So let's start with the test. So this is some of these functions are from the enzyme libraries for helping testing React components. And so shallow, what that does is it pretends to render the app component, the passed-in component here, but it doesn't render everything underneath it. We can kind of drill down further as we need. So what I do is I first off create the app component, and then I find the paper, check if it exists, and so let's save that. Now we have an error here. The paper is not defined. So let's do that. So what I'm doing here is I'm importing paper because I'll be referring to it, but I don't want the whole, I don't want to use the whole thing. I just want a mock of it because I don't need all the functionalities of paper in my test. So as long as my test says accesses the mock, then it's okay, because unit test is we're only testing the one functionality that you're working on. You want to isolate your test to just that one function. So you don't want to pull in a bunch of outside code, and that means when something goes wrong, rather than debugging your actual code, you have to trace down what's wrong with someone else's stuff, which isn't a unit test anymore. So now that is, let's see. Okay, so we still have an error. It's now expecting true, but we receive false. That's because we haven't actually implemented anything yet. App. So now we need to. Oh, okay. So I already added that. So, question, what's the simplest way to make this test pass?
Empty paper.
So, let's go paper. And it passes. Cool. So now let's move on to the next test. So should render a message of each entry in the message log prop. So here we defined that there should be a message log property that gets passed in, which is an array of this object. So how should we write this test? Anybody?
Do you have some dummy data for your testing?
Yeah, so we can mock a message property to pass into the component. So let's do prop. Message log. Actually, that's a little convoluted. Let's do this instead. So, what is message log? It's an array of timestamp and so an array of number and string object. So, timestamp. I usually just go give me a timestamp. Gonna add a few more.
Wouldn't it, for test-driven development, have one test for testing with one entry and then multiple entries?
Good point. So what you're saying is, rather than, so right now just add one entry.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'm a little ahead of myself. I haven't gotten completely used to it yet. So good catch.
I've done TDD before, so.
So const add component.
You okay?
All right. So we want to check that a message is actually rendered. Trying to remember the syntax. Log component equals app find. We made paper. So we're expecting paper log component dot text to let's see. What the? Go away. Alright, so we got undefined, or we're expecting undefined. Wait, that's not right.
This is log 0.
Oh, yeah. Good point. So I should do this. There. So we're expecting Hadouken, we receive paper. That's weird. So I haven't gotten completely used to this syntax yet, so I think what I needed was dive. Okay, so we got an empty string. Let's see how to fix that. Any ideas?
Message and message button.
Add message ID. So we have message log taken out of props here. So we'll probably want to render message. Message log. Like that.
Well, this becomes my question then, like where's the line between the simplest thing that you can write versus something that's somewhat scalable?
So the idea is you write the simplest thing that you can. So even if it's usually the simplest thing would be return exactly what you're expecting.
Okay.
And then you work your way up to the next step and the next step. Eventually, yeah, so like you'll have eventually more tests. So let's say, right, for this test here, I'm expecting Hadouken.
Right.
So the simplest thing would be to just render Hadouken. And then your next test would be render another message. And now you go, okay, what's the simplest thing to do this one? You could return it using an if else. And then eventually you'll be like, wait, so this, your refactor step, you'll think, okay, this is stupid. I can't just if else the entire thing. So you refactor, come up with a better solution. It's kind of reinforces the way you think, and I think eventually you can skip some of that step and jump to a more a less simple solution like that. But like to start out, I think it's suggested that you follow that step exactly and just go super simple. So
I don't know if I want to have thousands of tests though. So.
exactly. So that's why you don't want to. Just probably at your second or third test of doing if else, you think the fastest and simplest way for me to fix this, to implement this, would be to just come up with the logic you need. So
Okay.
let's do this here. I'll return.
Yeah, and there's also at least in the testing framework that we're using, the concept of suites to kind of organize them. So if you had a suite that was only for all the permutations,
Why didn't that
you
work?
can kind of group them together that way. And so like test out an error or something like that.
Okay, there's a problem with my test, I think.
It's always the test fault.
Yeah. Stupid test. All right. So at this point, I usually, because I don't know like all the calls yet. So console.log just to see what I have.
What testing frameworks are you using?
So I'm using Jest. It comes with the Create React app.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
That'd be like the default one you probably use
yeah.
too. So we have size,
Alright.
adjustments, Simon.
So it looks like Hadouken is on children.
Oh, that's a load.
That's probably what I should have checked. Thanks.
Isn't that in props?
Yeah, but the props gets rendered. We want to check the render.
Okay, I didn't know if that was just referring to what you passed.
Yeah. So children dot Dutch. Yay! Passes.
We
So
just comment. Could we remove the Hadoken from the code just so we can see the red step
yes,
correctly? As well?
good idea. So let's remove this. So text element to run on a single node, but found 0, so we want to render the children.
You can write there's a teacher if there is any child. You can write there's if there is any text.
You can.
You should or you can.
What?
Exclamation point.
I suppose you should, right? It's better to err on the side of more tests than less.
Yeah, so could probably write. So it should render papers children. Or is that what you're thinking? Or
Yeah, check the if there is any children and check if like children has text or something.
see, the problem is the paper is not our component, and the rendering of its children should already be tested by the implementation of paper. And so this test doesn't really is kind of a duplicate test, in my opinion. I don't see the value in doing this one.
I think the spirit of Dimo's question is how granular do you actually need to make these? Because if we did implement paper, would we want to test something that says render each of the children, make sure that if we put something in that child that it renders, if we put something in the next child that it renders, like how deep do you need to go, or do you
Right.
test something
So-
higher level?
So paper itself should be testing if it will render the children pass to it. And so it doesn't make sense for the parent of paper to test that its child renders its children. So that test is already covered by paper. Even if we implement paper. If we implement paper,
Mhm.
then we should have written the test for paper when we were implementing it. So like on this, I'm testing app. I'm not testing. I'm testing the app component. I'm not testing the paper component's ability to render.
Right.
So
So
That-
we just need to check if the paper exists.
yeah. So
or
I
paper has some properties or something. Or
yeah. So what you can
properties setups correct with them.
so yeah. So that would make sense. So you could do. If you pass a proper, you can check that the app component passes a specific property to paper. So what you could do is the way this is set up is I'm not exactly sure how to test that this. Okay, I know how. So should pass.
It's the renders children part, that sounds kind of like an overall test for we're rendering one child, and then as we render more and more children, it kind of all those tests will cover, do we render the children?
Yeah,
Mhm.
thank you. I think.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you're covering that test through a bunch of tests.
No, it's nice that Justin explained what I mean. He explained what Kevin.
We just need to talk to each other.
Alright, we good there, or do we want to discuss that more? All right, so let's write the next test. I'm gonna copy this, so I don't want to type. All right, so what should the next test be?
Putting in something about Hadoken.
Should have copied the whole thing then. Right. You got
What kind of language is that?
Japanese.
From a video game.
Oh, okay.
It's Japanese.
What was that?
Big-
The street fighting, yeah.
Oh.
So, boom. So now we have Shoryuken instead of a Duken. We still have a Duken, but we're expecting Shoryuken. How now shall we fix this?
That's the message log.
The array is instead of the separate message.
What's that?
Put the array instead of a separate message.
Put the error.
Array.
Array.
Oh, array. How? Like that?
Or
The variable from promise.
You mean access the message log array?
Yep.
Message log. So we know it's an array.
Like at this point, would you skip a step and say for each thing in the message log print something, or would you
Yeah.
keep it real simple and just do access the first thing since it's all we're testing?
We could do the first thing. I think that's the simplest step. It's just render the first thing in there, and then you the next test would be a multi-value array.
Okay.
So 0 dot message. Undefined. Message log. Message log.
Did you do
the
zero index?
access to the first
In your test there?
In my test.
yeah message there's the show message
Because in your code you're doing message log index 0 dot message. And
Yeah.
in your test you're just doing message log the entire array.
No, but you're
No,
expected to.
I'm
still
expecting
get
an array. I'm
No.
passing the array.
You're not expect. You're expecting the string output from the render.
Right.
You're passing the array through message log,
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
and then it's printing first. Should be printing first. So it looks like message log is not defined.
For some reason.
Is it not defined in the actual code?
You can find out. These are from previous tests. So one way to test just a single test. That way we only look at one test. So message log looks like it exists.
Yeah, pass that time.
Are we sure that was the most? Did we check to see which one was failing? Because we might have broken an earlier one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right.
Because they here.
Oh, yeah.
Colors there.
Yeah, so a bunch
Yeah.
of the previous tests have failed. So that's fun. So
Because you change the type of the property. Before, property was like array, but for now, the property example message.
Well, now all of these other tests are not passing a message log parameter or property
Right.
down in it. So when you're trying to access the 0 in the code,
yeah, and
it's
they
gonna
don't
fail.
exist. So there are two ways we can fix this. We can create a default, like default property equals, and then pass that into every test. The second way that I prefer is to actually check for that. There you go.
Okay.
It's much more better with the default.
Yeah.
So I can remove this console log now. Test still good. Yep. All right, next test. Oh, I guess these are badly named.
Should render.
It should render.
broken.
Got it. Oh, I got this. And this one should render,
2 messages.
yeah. Two messages. Copy this. 'Cause I'm lazy. Be lazy. All right.
At least you're supporting both. Messages. You changed the very one.
Yeah. Just want to make this different. All right, so
And
two.
second
Index.
index. The next one.
Wait, index?
For the
You,
expected
you assign same message.
Oh,
second
yeah.
expected message, you are using 0.
Oh, yeah. So, I'm expecting. What am I expecting? I'm expecting to see both of these. So, how would it look? What do you guys think it should look like? Should it be should be like that?
Should there be some line breaks in between?
Yes, I mean, I'm asking.
You could check the lens.
Remember we kind of designed this ahead of time, so before we started doing the test. So what are we expecting from the log? So if we go back and take a look at this, well, this is a little more complicated when you click this. So let's see. But in general, what should we be seeing when we get multiple log messages? So we're expecting that there's going to be a line break between them. So
But in the example that in that other one, it has line break after the last one as well.
yeah, so I don't want to get all the way to that point. So let's just keep it simple, and we'll just have one message per line. Yeah, one message per line. So we're not going to do like this whole thing.
I'm asking because like at the very bottom of that
Oh.
column, you have a
I mean this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying let's not do that. Let's just have a one line break. So since it's HTML, we're expecting normally right here, I know I'm going to be using, like, I'm going to break it into, I'm going to render it in kind of like a list component. So I'm expecting a list. So what I would do at this point is log component dot file.
Which is just for
So you want to make sure there are two items in there. But we don't. So the simplest to do here is probably can't do that. That's
you
not
said
gonna
it would be have that we originally had as an if. Well, an if above that, say if there are two entries, print this exact string, else do this.
So you're saying,
And I know that the main thing is to do, the next simplest step, but in execution, would you actually do that, or would you just skip to the part where you take the lists
Yes.
and print them all out?
so like I said, kind of like when you first start, you should try to stick to the simplest. Just kind of enforce
Fundamentals.
the steps. But I think, like personally, in my opinion, once you get used to it, you just skip to like the next part where
How do you run it?
yeah.
I mean, part of like it's too easy to go down that way. Because part of this, the goal of this is also you're not writing any extraneous code, and so you only write enough to cover the
Yeah.
exact unit tests that you have. And if your unit tests aren't getting you the code, then either you don't need that code or you don't have all your unit tests.
Yeah. Fair.
Okay. So there's no easy way to do this in.
Oh, can you not do if-else statements within the?
Yeah, I can't do that here. So React is
You
won't allow you to render multiple. Yeah.
You just do the
Well, actually, I
conditional-
could just do. No, because I just have to map it, and then that's the solution already. That is the simplest one. In this case, at least I think. Unless you can see another way to do this.
String literal. Because you. So wait, so you can't actually put like if-else statements within.
You can, but
It is one step.
you can't render two
12
elements
inside.
inside a single statement like this.
That's the end.
Yeah, that's true. Actually,
You can
no, this
create up
this
there.
actually
I
I could do it
Yeah,
before.
before, yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
So const.
I mean, the simplest would just be put in with string literal.
Just
in
string
that
literal.
case. Also, that's going to break all the tests where there's only one.
Actually, this is too iterative for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never got to the bit of the Tootsie Pop without biting.
You didn't expect me to be in here to be.
I did not. Actually,
I'm being nicer than the person who taught me, so.
Just check the.
actually, I'm actually doing I'm checking first for the length.
Just see what those two.
We need to check value or we need to check the count of the messages. What we need to check?
Oops. There.
Won't that break all of your.
That does break everything else. Oh, that one didn't work either. What? So let's focus on this one for now. I don't want to see all the other error messages yet. So this is why. So I need to find paper.find li.
Meeting, gotta book this room for another half an hour. So.
Okay.
Okay.
So let me ask you this: in an idyllic world, do you think that the tests or the test suites would line up with, like if we did more detailed tasks in our stories? So, like in your story, you would say, retrieve data from API, do some kind of manipulation or something like that, and the test suites would kind of line up with that.
No, I don't. It should be more of a. Go ahead.
Because the tasks really should be more product oriented, like this is what you are producing with each step.
Okay.
Whereas this is really more function oriented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
for an example, when I learned this, I learned this writing FizzBuzz, where just 1, 2 fizz. So where it like replaces any
yeah.
multiple of 3 with fizz. Any
Oh, that
multiple,
game. Yeah. I know what you mean. Okay.
where it's just a function you pass one
Yeah.
number and returns what it is. So that would be a unit test suite for that specific function.
Yeah.
Whereas I hope that we don't have like a right function to do this
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
task.
that's.
I hope nobody here needs unit tests for FizzBuzz.
Haven't seen it so far. So
Or is writing FizzBuzz?
let's.
Who knows? Maybe that would be like Dish House. Now with FizzBuzz.
Let's see what that gives us. Doo-doo-doo. So it didn't find that node.
Let's use this first, like turn out operate and watch or activate. There's some problems.
You're thinking.
Yes, and keywords. Can you console the message
The message log length. It's 2.
What about the messages?
Messages.
It's true.
It's also 2.
feature go back to the tests. Maybe first part message log length.
Message log length. Well, according to the test here, it says we expect a 2. So that means message log here is 2. So what we could do is log this part, see what it gives us. It's like 1 where the node is the nodes it has are null.
It's not written in
But it does
the.
have
Did
children.
you call it by div or something? Should it be inside of the same?
No, it shouldn't need div. These are block elements already. I mean, you could do span or p tags as well. But paper. Let's take a look at that children. It said children had an array. So this has a length of 2 here.
You can just check
So we could just check
two.
that. And it passes. And there's this little error here, the key prop thing. So we gotta do this. Key equals. Cool. So now we probably broke a bunch of other. Oh yeah, we know we broke a bunch of other tests. GG.
That's so nice.
So, what would you do at this point?
I mean, the problem at this point is we run into the case of we didn't really define what we wanted the output to be for all those people. We're changing the output, so I guess either at that point you have to go rewrite all your tests.
What?
Yeah.
Because you've changed what
Change
the
it,
expected
yeah.
output for all
Right.
results.
Yeah.
So you gotta rewrite. That's the hassle. So it's a good idea. is You gotta first define well.
Right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you will
We-
do like a bunch of unnecessary work.
Right. So
Maybe
that's
if you could come up with a game plan for how to define things well, that could be helpful.
yeah. So like I was saying, at the beginning where I normally write a bunch of test cases that kind of like we do the design step, so we know what we're expecting out first. So this is an example of how not to do it.
Also, this is an good example of why you don't test view, right? Do
Yeah.
test-driven development for views because,
Yeah.
I mean, even if you do write all your tests perfectly, go through, implement it, you take it over to the product owner, they're like, oh, could we change this
This,
to
yeah.
something slightly different that breaks all of your unit tests?
Yep.
You gotta do it.
But they don't
That's
care
what-
about your models.
Right.
That's why in Game Finder I end up testing the models most
Yeah.
of
You
the
don't.
time.
You generally don't want to
Okay.
test GUI and the views because it changes a lot.
Do we even
And-
need for Qt to have unit tests for Qt? We could just unit test the JavaScript code.
Well, there, QML is the data models as well, which is something we
Oh.
said.
Yeah.
And so, yes, you will want to be testing your data models.
Yes, I guess in that case. But you don't need it for just regular QML views.
Well, your
UI component.
QML is not just views and JavaScript is data
Yes.
models. We need to test models, whether they're QML or anything, and not views.
Okay.
So it's ugly. It's gonna be ugly. I bet you.
Yeah.
I mean,
the,
if
the
we
QT test or
if we
Unit test
the
for
model.
Qt.
and there is a framework for QML testing.
Yeah.
And we just need to make sure that we follow model view separation.
Sure.
I mean, if you break the view, that's a lot more obvious.
Right.
than-
Yeah, the data behind that.
Unless your D8 returns a 9, then that's kind of obvious that something's wrong.
You could have a +1.
Well, I said just the D8.
Just the D8, okay. So yeah, at this point, we should have designed it and expected correctly or designed what we expected the output to be.
Right.
So let's say we were expecting let's say we were expecting for every message it renders an LI with the message text inside it. We can backtrack. Let's kill this. Where will we backtrack to? We would go back to probably, so last good one, I think, before that would have been right here. Should have rendered paper component, and we should probably do, it should render an LI for, like, it should render one LI. Yes? No?
For that case, or
Well, for the next test. So let's write out a few. Sure. Yeah?
it should render an li containing Hadoken and li containing Shuriken.
Ooh. And the next step would be should render.
And the second one, you have two li containing Shuriken. Read the second test that you just wrote.
Render 2 li. Oh. Should render. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think at this point,
Two LIs containing other data.
at that point, really?
I mean, right now with what we've written, we've hard coded for 1 or for 2.
Right, but if once you get to this point, wouldn't it the simplest thing to do at this point to pass both of these tests is to write the logic you need to handle, like the logic you need to handle more.
No, at that point, the simplest thing would be
just
if 2, grab the 0 index value and then the 2 index value, and then you need to, and not necessarily change it over to a for loop yet, because just keep going by 0 index then 1 index is a lot simpler than trying to write out the for loop concatenating and all that stuff.
We need to check the same twice.
In my opinion, at this point, the logic to actually render the different ones would be simpler than the logic of multiple if-elses.
I mean, so far with just those 2, we have a single if-else.
Are we imagining then that we're writing an application where we don't know that there might be more things?
Well, the idea is
Messages?
you write just enough code to cover your unit tests.
Right.
And because from what the unit tests that we've written so far with only 2, we're only assuming from those unit tests that will contain 1 or will contain 2.
Or are we?
And now we're going to the assumption of it can contain more as well.
Okay. I don't know. As soon as you get
So
to the point where you know that it's going to contain more, it seems like get it to be
Right,
1
that's
and then
what
get it to be
he's
as many
asking,
as you
yeah.
want it to do. If you know that that's how it's going to be.
Yeah, 1.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're just
Because the test 1, 2, 3, 4, it's
Forever.
spread,
Yeah.
yeah.
like the line seems arbitrary. Like
And
there's
why
1 and then
we-
there's multiple.
And why we need to check the
Two is-
should render Hadouken, should render Shuriken,
Yeah.
should contain Hadouken and Shuriken. It's kind of duplicate.
That's
Let's
It
walk
could be.
through these and we'll see what we have.
We just need to check if there is something. It's not empty. That's all. We just need to check is it could pass 1 or more than 1, and we need to check that if text is not empty. And that's all.
Right.
What
I
we
think
need,
that's general case.
Yeah.
why we need to check all of these cases.
I mean, at that point, like where do you cut the line of this is like at that point you're just trying to go, okay, we don't need all those tests. How many tests do we need?
Right. That's actually you are very discerned about how many you want to put in, right? What is sufficient for this case? I don't know. For this case, yeah, it's like Tima said, maybe 3 cases for the 0, 1, like a variable that might be sufficient instead of many.
I mean, it gets to the point of just like if you need to have enough to show like it is able to handle all the different cases that it can run into, or at least show that you can handle all the cases. Because like for the first one, I can just hard code it always returns Hadouken,
Yeah.
and if I don't have that, like if I don't have the rest of them, then I can't. So that and like then the second one, it only shows that it can handle 2, and then as you add more, you're adding more complexity to it, and you're trying to avoid just making all these assumptions and only writing code to cover your tests. Because otherwise, that's how you just end up with pretty much just how you end up with bloat. The idea behind this is to avoid
Right.
bloat of having I'm handling all these other I need to do these things for these other cases, but I haven't actually
Right.
created these cases.
Right, but then you gotta define differently. So first thing should be render like NI, and second one should be the content check, whether the content is what we want. So what I'm saying is the definition of that one is not correct. Then you want to
So you want
check
more
the content.
tests?
You gotta define a different test, whether actually render and line, and then you gotta check content, like separate case, not inside of like a line.
Right. So
Okay. Yeah. So I agree with that. We
more tests.
More tests.
That makes actually.
Also, we got 7 minutes left, so
Yeah, I figured
Yeah.
we weren't going to be able to finish this, but this presentation was basically just show you guys the exercise of TDD. I probably should have chosen a different problem to solve. I like went ahead way too far, and I already did the model.
Yeah.
Like
so
here's the
I mean,
dice.
for the last couple minutes,
So maybe we can look at the models and what I did to test those. So, like I started with the dice module.
Mhm.
So here's the test I did. So these are some helpers to test value falling within a range. And so here I'm defining the random function. So return a number between 0 and argument n. This I kind of broke the rule here of unit testing. It should be one assert per test. So, but yeah, right here this should be 2 different test cases.
Yeah.
You see here, you check like to show the error, you check a negative and different type of the. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Before. You
So
just need to check the type.
right here, this should also be 3 different test
Mhm.
cases.
Is it not like bad practice?
It's not. The best practice is 1 assert per unit test. So
But if I want to serve per unit test, you spend like
Yeah.
week for writing the test, a couple of days,
Yeah.
couple of days
So
for
how
writing
much
the
is
code.
extreme? That's the question.
How it's kind of you can write test like whole your life, but
it's
it's kind of it depends of
it's not that it's not that long to write a unit test like that. Like this, you can break it into 3 unit tests easily.
Yeah.
And it's really short. It's like you have the expected error, the call width, and then expect. That's 3 lines per unit
yeah.
test.
But if you need to check response from the server,
You do
you
not
need to
check.
all fields inside of the JSON. Or
Do not test server like requests. You would want to mock your server requests,
Mhm.
and then you that way you control what you're expecting what, so you can like mock out and say, okay, this is what I'm expecting the server to return to me.
Mhm.
This is what my function that this is what my function is going to do with it. That's what you check.
I'm just trying to figure out is there some straight rules for writing tests, or there's no rule? It
So,
just depends on the
like
how big your like fantasy.
so like you're saying you don't want to spend a long time with your tests. Your test feedback should be like near instant. Each unit test should run in less than a second.
Mhm.
So if you put in actual server requests in
Mhm.
your test,
Yeah, it's gonna be-
you'll have to wait for long. You never want to do that.
Uh-huh.
You don't want to do an actual timer test.
Mhm.
You want to mock that and
Mhm.
return instantly.
I just
Yeah.
want to get the answer how much tests you need to write for like straight amount of the voltage you want to.
Well, there's-
yeah, it's
it's
kind of. It
there's-
depends of what.
It
Yeah.
Depends of you or depends of the something else.
I mean, so when you're writing code and writing a function, the question you should ask yourself: how complicated is this? So how easy is it for it to break?
Mm-hmm.
And if something breaks in it down the line, how obvious will it be? Because I mean, like if I wrote a function where it's like, if it breaks, it'll be like maybe with VMs or something.
Mhm.
Just VMs are not like just like generating the exact data for it. If that breaks, it's going to be a pain to try to figure out what's going wrong because our logging is wrong at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And like that, it's not going to be obvious during testing because they don't always look at VMs. So if there's if you can break out a part of the VM process for unit tests and doing something like this, that'd be good because you can then have a nice suite to run for if you have to make any changes to make sure you're not breaking any cases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see also benefit that if you start to write a test, you'll immediately see that you write like bad code. If you write bad tests and you see that a lot of the same stuff, okay, I'm doing something wrong. I need to change my code to make this test more better. It's kind of very big benefit that you like on beginning development something, you immediately will see that how your design is. Yeah. Thank you. It was very helpful to see the picture how important this stuff. Yeah, but yeah, it's kind of it's need to be like it's need to do that to understand how much stuff you should cover and how
Yeah,
how it
I mean, I think it's how much test you need. It's really just as much as you need to cover all your bases. Of course, but I think we're all humans. We probably can't like think of every single test case. And that's why. But when you can cover it as much as possible, it kind of ensures that if you change anything, you see the test still passes, you're good. If you see something's broken, it means whatever you changed broke something. Or if you get a bug report, instead of fixing it immediately, run the test, see if something's broken, start writing a test case for that bug, and try to simulate that bug, and then you can fix it, and then now that bug is going to be fixed, and as you run your tests, it passes, that bug is already fixed.
Yeah, it's also for protection of your ass because you can run the test and you immediately will see something wrong on the server side as well because your functionality works well, your test pass, right? And if it's kind of server side, you can address this task to somebody else. Your code is perfect. Right?
Never perfect.
Yeah. If you run the test and all tests pass, and you can show that like 70% of your code covered by tests. So, okay, you see, my code is perfect.
So this morning, I actually went ahead on a different branch and actually got this working. But there were a lot of test cases that I skipped. Tristan was pointing out that I kind of jumped ahead a little bit. And I don't. Well, I'm not used to. Not yet used to going that fine grained. But yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it's a pretty good practice. I've seen my code quality improve a lot than previously before I started doing TDD, and you just got to keep at it, just keep trying, keep doing it, and you'll get used to it. And the time it takes to do the tests or write the tests, it starts to go down. And like I'm a little slow still a little bit, especially with testing React, because that I'm not fully used to their API yet, the testing framework for using Enzyme, but it's just gotta practice.
Your computer's about to die.
Yeah,
Yeah.
time to
the meeting.
quit this. Thanks, guys.
Real quick before we use that, can you go back to Dice Dude just for 2 seconds?
Yeah,
The other one, the old one?
this one.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to know more about Fade Leaf Little Bottom. Can you tell us just a tiny bit?
You can talk
About
about
what?
Fade Leaf Little Bottom, who has 13 stealth and 7 perception.
yeah.
Probably a halfling or something like that.